friends, it's Valerie. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to this week's What's for Dinner. If you're new here, welcome. I would love if you would hit that subscribe button and join my YouTube family. I put out What's for Dinner videos every Sunday and I've got 3 inspirational meals again for you this week and I hope that you enjoy them. So let's get started. This first meal is honey mustard chicken salad sandwiches. To start off, you're going to need 2 cups of cooked chicken, and I already had like some cooked chicken already in my refrigerator to use up. I needed a little bit more, so I'm doing 1 frozen chicken breast in my Instant Pot, and I'm just adding a cup of water or half a cup of water in there and a little bit of salt. And I'm going to cook that for 15 minutes on manual, and I'm going to let that naturally release a little bit, and maybe 10 minutes. That helps the moisture stay in the chicken, and once it's done, I'm just taking it out and shredding it up. This part is to your preference, like if you want to cut it up to cube it for your chicken salad. I prefer it shredded and into some smaller pieces, so that is what I'm doing here. And I also have that additional chicken that I had already had in my fridge to use up, and I'm just going to go ahead and add that into the bowl with the rest of this chicken. You could also just use a rotisserie chicken to make this easier for you if that's what you're wanting to do. Next, the recipe calls for half of an apple. I'm using a Fuji apple, I believe, here. And I am just peeling the half of the apple, and I cored it as well, and then you're going to dice that up into some smaller bite-sized pieces. I actually ended up in the end using the entire apple. I just wanted that additional like crunch to it, plus I figured a little extra wouldn't hurt. You can do that if you like. I tasted it like once I added in the half to just kind of see if I wanted it that way. If you don't want too much additional sweetness, then you can go ahead and leave that out. Next, you're going to need about 2 tablespoons of thinly sliced green onions or chives. I'm using green onions here, and I'm just cutting up 2 green onions, whatever amount that kind of gives me. It's close to 2 tablespoons. Next, you're going to need 1/3 cup of dried cranberries or cherries. I'm using these dried cranberries, and I'm just going to go ahead and pour that into my bowl. And then I'm just going to quickly toss that all together. This will make it just easier for the dressing when it goes on it to not like have a certain ingredient just all clumped together in one spot. And to get started on the dressing, the recipe says you'll need either 1/4 cup of non-fat Greek yogurt or some mayo, plus an additional 2 tablespoons of either mayo or yogurt. I'm going with mayo here just because I like it, but also I don't even have any Greek yogurt. I think a good combo would be to kind of mix the two as well to kind of lighten it up a bit, but I do like the taste of mayo. And now we are adding in 1 tablespoon of honey, as well as 1.5 teaspoons of Dijon mustard, and then just some salt and pepper to taste. I'm using about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and then just some fresh cracked black pepper. And then just go ahead and mix that all together, and I'm just using this little silicone spoon here, and I really like this spoon for things like this because it is so flexible that when you have like clumps of the mayonnaise that you'll see there, I can kind of press them down with the spoon and just really get that all blended very well. And next, you're just going to go ahead and add that dressing into your chicken salad bowl. And I'm adding just some to start off with because I kind of wanted to toss it all together with that dressing to start off with and just see if I felt like it was too much dressing for my preference. I feel like that's a good thing to do just to double check that it's not going to be too much for you, but it really wasn't for me. In fact, it wasn't enough. I would have liked a little bit extra. So yeah, but it worked out pretty good and it had really great flavor. And this is just you seeing me add that extra apple in that I mentioned earlier, and I'm just going to go ahead and set this aside because I'm going to be eating it later on in the day. And once it was time to actually eat dinner, I made some fries, and I just cut up some potatoes into some wedges, and I'm adding some olive oil, some garlic powder, some of this garlic herb seasoning, and I'm giving them a quick toss here. I do believe I also added in some more of the garlic herb seasoning and some dried parsley. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and mix that all back together again. And I even like decided, oh, some Parmesan cheese would be really good on this. And I had some shaved like Parmesan Asiago Romano blend, so I added some of that on top as well. It just sounded really good and it was delicious. I'm just placing that all in my air fryer basket, and I'm gonna go ahead and air fry those at 400 degrees for about 20 minutes. And I served that chicken salad on some grain type bread with like seeds and nuts and things like that in it. It was so good. I really love this variation of like a honey mustard chicken salad. It had great flavor and we loved it. This next meal is a Cajun pasta. I'm gonna start off by cutting my bell peppers, and y'all, I didn't realize how bad my knives were getting prior to getting this new knife for Christmas. Like, it seemed fine to me, but now that I'm using this, it's like I could tell the world a difference. Anyways, so I was a little afraid when cutting this pepper, but I'm getting used to it and excited to try out some new kitchen gadget. And yeah, so we're gonna cut the peppers, and the recipe calls for 1 red and 1 green bell pepper thinly sliced, but my store didn't have any red bell peppers left, so I just had to use an orange bell pepper in place of that. So yeah, I'm just taking out all the seeds and ribs the best I can here, and I am just slicing that up into some thin strips. Next, the recipe calls for 8 ounces of white sliced mushrooms. I actually had 2 5-ounce containers of mushrooms, so I'm working with 10 ounces of mushrooms here, and mine weren't sliced, they were whole, so I'm just going to go ahead and slice those all up. So this recipe calls for a package of Hillshire Farm Tahine Chili Lime Smoked Sausage with mango. I actually didn't have that, but I had this beef smoked sausage in my freezer, so I'm just pulling that out to use for this. I've already defrosted it, and I'm just gonna go ahead and slice that up into some coin-shaped pieces. And I like to slice mine thin because I do like them to get browned on as many edges as possible. Next, I'm just taking 1 small yellow onion, and I'm going to dice that up. I actually thought this recipe called for like thin slices of onion, so I cut all the way through, not realizing that it was supposed to be diced. So I made my life a little bit harder as far as dicing it up, since it wasn't all attached at one end, but it all still works out in the end. Just take a little more effort on my end, you know, work smarter, not harder, but apparently I wasn't paying attention. Next, I'm taking my large skillet over medium to medium high heat with about a tablespoon of olive oil, and I'm adding in that sliced up smoked sausage. I'm actually doing this in a different order than the recipe calls for. They have you put in all the vegetables first and then the sausage, but yeah, I wanted to make sure my sausage got nice and browned first. I just prefer it that way, so I did it in this order, and I just made sure every so often to kind of stir them around so that all ends could kind of get a little bit more browned. And then I thought I hit record, but I didn't, so I added in all those chopped onions, and I pressed in 2 to 3 cloves of garlic. So that's in there now, and I'm just gonna kind of like let that saute for another 1 to 2 minutes, and then I'm gonna go ahead and add in all my peppers and mushrooms to that and give that all a good stir. And you're gonna go ahead and want to let those vegetables cook down and get tender. This took in total about 7 to 8 minutes, and I went ahead and made sure also to go back and give them a stir every so often. And then once those are all soft and tender, I'm just going to go ahead and remove them from the pan to another bowl and just set that aside. We'll be adding that back in later. So now to the same skillet, I'm going to go ahead and add a 1/4 cup of olive oil. And I'm also going to go ahead and add in a 1/4 cup of white flour and just go ahead and whisk that all together until you get like a dough, like a roux, and let that cook for an additional minute. Once you kind of get that dough consistency, that roux texture, let it cook for an additional minute so you cook out the taste of the flour. And then you're going to go ahead and whisk in 1 cup of chicken broth. I'm just using water that I mixed some chicken better than bouillon into. And I start off with small amounts of the liquid and just keep whisking like very briskly to make sure that it starts to get nice and smooth. And only adding a little bit of time and smoothing it out. And then as you'll start to see, it'll start to get way smoother. And once it's really incorporated and smooth, you can kind of add in a larger amount of liquid. But yeah, so I'm just going to go ahead and just whisk that for a minute here. And then I'm going to go ahead and add in 2 cups of milk. I believe I'm using whole milk here, and I'm going to do the same thing, adding a little at a time and whisking, and then just keep repeating that until I've got all the milk in there and it's all nice and smooth and creamy. Next, the recipe calls for Cajun seasoning, and I'm just using this Tony Chachere's Creole seasoning in substitution for that. And it says to use anywhere from 2 to 4 teaspoons of it. I started off with 2, and I'm using a 1/2 teaspoon measuring spoon here because it fits into the container easily. But yeah, I started off with the 2, and I whisked it all in, and then I kind of gave it a quick taste, and I thought, oh, you know what, like it needs some more. So I added in the full 4, and I do regret it. I would stick with 2. Maybe 3, but if you like it really spicy, of course that's different. If you like a lot of spice, go with your 4. But if you normally use seasonings like this, you kind of know what you normally add in. You should just stick with that amount. And then I whisk it all together, and I'm going to add in a 1/2 teaspoon of dried oregano and some salt and pepper. And I am also adding in 2 ounces of cream cheese, and I'm gonna let that kind of like melt into there. I'm gonna whisk it in and make sure it starts to get like nice and incorporated with the sauce. And you're gonna go ahead and let that come to a boil. Next, the recipe calls for adding in 2 cups of uncooked penne pasta, and this is going to cook in the sauce. This is where I had an issue. So to me, I've cooked pasta in liquid before in a pan like this, and it's normally thinner liquid though, like chicken broth, and this just seemed too thick to cook the pasta correctly. So it does say you can add an additional 1/4 cup to 1/2 cup of chicken broth or milk. So I just used the juices that were at the bottom of that like sausage and vegetable mixture for my extra liquid, and I cooked it for the 12 to 14 minutes that it suggested, and I did lower my heat to the medium low, and I covered it with the lid as well. And my pasta was just not cooked, but I added a little bit of liquid. I didn't get it on camera, but I added a little bit extra liquid, maybe another 1/4 cup of liquid, maybe a 1/2, and I put the lid back on and I let it cook for another 5 to 10 minutes. Like I watched it. 5 minutes went by, I checked it, and I let it go for no more than another 5 minutes, and it did work out in the end. But I'd either start off with the extra liquid so you don't have to worry about it. And yeah, but this is it. I added back in the peppers and the sausage and got them all warmed back up. And this actually was really, really good. We liked it a lot once we got the pasta to a right consistency. It just took that additional time in liquid, and it was a little spicy for my liking, but it had great flavor, and I would definitely have this again. I would just cut back on the Cajun seasoning, and I sprinkled some Parmesan cheese on top of that. It was so good. This last meal is Southern baked mac and cheese. So you are going to need a cup of 1/2 and 1/2. I just used 1/2 cup of heavy cream and 1/2 cup of milk to equal the 1/2 and 1/2. And then you'll need some evaporated milk. I actually don't have any, so I'm substituting just milk for that. And then the recipe says it's optional to add an egg. I am going to do that. It's going to leave more of a custard consistency, which I think I'll like, so I'm going to do that. You're also going to need 3 tablespoons of butter, and I've got 4 right there. I'm just going to cut off whatever I don't need. And for cheeses, you're going to need half a cup each of these cheeses, half a cup of mozzarella, half a cup of jack cheese, half a cup of extra sharp cheddar. I actually have a little bit extra mozzarella because I want a little bit more of that cheese pull. And you'll need 8 ounces of uncooked macaroni noodles, 2 tablespoons of flour, and then for seasonings you're going to need salt, pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, cayenne pepper, and some Creole seasoning. I'm going to start off by cooking my 8 ounces of macaroni noodles. So I've just brought a large pot of water to a boil and I've salted it. And once it's boiling, I'm going to go ahead and add my pasta in and cook till al dente. And now to my skillet, I've added in the tablespoons of butter. I believe I added the whole 4. It only asked for 3. And then I whisked in my 2 tablespoons of flour and I whisked that and let it cook for about a minute to cook off that flour taste. Next, I'm going to slowly add in my milk that I substituted for the evaporated milk, and I'm also going to add in my half and half, and I'm doing this of course in small amounts until it's nice and smooth, and I'm whisking continuously along the way. I want to make sure that it stays nice and smooth and you don't want any lumps in your sauce. And I'm going to go ahead and let that simmer for about 3 to 5 minutes until the mixture thickens slightly. Next, I'm adding in a tablespoon of onion powder, and I'm using a really fine onion powder. I knew it would clump up, so I actually mixed it along the way in a little mixing cup with a little bit of water first so that it wouldn't clump up. And then I'm adding in 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, and of course I just dumped that right on top. Right after I was so careful about the onion powder, I dumped it right on top, and what did it do? It's going to clump up, of course, because I left it like that instead of spreading it across. But I went ahead and used my little spoon to kind of break it up, and then I went ahead and added in a teaspoon of Creole seasoning and a 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper, as well as just some regular black pepper. And you can just salt and pepper that to your taste preference. I know we really like black pepper in our macaroni, so I went ahead and added that in, and I waited on the salt. And I just whisked this all together, and I'm going to simmer that for about 2 minutes pretty gently. And I'm adding in the egg, so you'll see me just mixing that egg up really quickly in a side little dish here, because you don't want it to instantly cook. And I'm going to take a little bit of that sauce and add it in and whisk those two together, and then you'll add that into your main sauce here. It'll kind of help you not just have it all cook up like set really quickly. And then yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and whisk that in really well, and now I'm adding in my cheeses. It just said to add some cheese and then save some for the top of your macaroni dish. So I'm kind of just doing to eye what I feel like I need, and then I taste it and I'll add more. I have more cheese to the side or in my refrigerator that I can add on top if need be. So I wasn't too worried about it. I was more worried about having a nice cheesy creamy sauce. And yeah, so it was really good. I tasted it, and I also did add some salt in, as well as a little bit more Creole seasoning, just because I thought it needed a little bit extra. And you'll see me add in some extra cheese as well, and I'll just stir that in. And once it was all ready, I can go ahead and add in my cooked pasta that I went ahead and drained. And so I baked this mac and cheese, of course, because it's a southern baked mac and cheese. But I actually really would have preferred it just the way it is right here. Like, I'm a creamy mac and cheese kind of girl. But, I wanted to try a recipe that I hadn't tried. And so, I followed it and baked it like it said. But this right here would have been perfect for me. Because, of course, baked, you lose some of that just pure creamy texture that you would get. And now I'm just topping that with some more cheese, and I did need to go ahead and pull out the cheese that I had in the refrigerator just to kind of top it with some more. And I'm using just jack cheese and some more cheddar cheese, because gotta have cheddar cheese on top. It's what gives it that beautiful golden look. and I'm going to go ahead and bake that at 375 degrees for 20 minutes or until bubbly. And I do believe I also broiled that for about a minute to get it nice and broiled on top. And there you'll see me showing you some Pillsbury, they're like cornbread swirls. So I'm just going to serve these as a side with this mac and cheese, and I'm just baking those according to the package. And there's the mac and cheese out of the oven if you wanted to get a little look of that. It's beautiful. And there's those cornbread muffins. Those were so good. Like, we really, really liked those. And I just had them in my tortilla warmer there, like the little tortilla holder, just so that they stay warm. I served that with a little side salad. And I love this because mac and cheese is one of my favorite meals. Those little cornbread rolls are so good, though. So if you haven't tried those and you like cornbread, give those a try. They're super delicious. And we love salad, too. So I just did a little version of like a Caesar salad. And put some croutons and this Brianna's dressing. That's my favorite, like, Caesar dressing, as well as just some shaved little Parmesan Asiago Romano. And thanks so much for watching, friends. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and that little bell so you don't miss out on any future What's for Dinner videos. And I hope you all have an amazing week.